We're here Friday to help those kids that were not, although I may ask someone that was not here to find it in their notes. So we're going to start with our friend Garrett. Okay, Garrett?
Okay.
Everybody's got their sheet out. Back at the bluffs of the Reno retreat, Reno is joined by Captain who? Benteen and his forces. Major Reno is noticeably unstable and is trying to regain his composure. The soldiers are then ordered to dig rifle pits and prepare for the Indian attacks sure to come soon. During this preparation period, Captain who? Thomas Weir approached Major Reno and said, "Sir, permission to go to the sound of the firing." Reno, still dazed, responded,
"Permission denied, we have wounded here."
"Permission denied, we have wounded here." The captain then approached Captain Benteen and repeated his request, and Benteen's immediate response was, "Permission denied." The captain, frustrated, left without permission and rode northward toward the bluffs to see what he could see. Winfield Edgerly, who assumed permission had been obtained from Major Reno, ordered the entire company to mount and follow the captain. The command advanced along the bluffs towards the battle, climbing to the top of a high hill, now known as
Weir Point.
Weir Point.
How do you spell weird?
It's right on your ID sheet. Okay, the area was glassed towards the Custer fight, and the captain later stated that he viewed something that looked like Indians, quote, shooting into the ground. The Indians that appeared to be shooting into the ground were later determined to be young warriors who were finishing off the wounded soldiers after battle. The command was soon joined by Captain Benteen and more soldiers. They were facing an overwhelming amount of warriors, which forced the soldiers back to the Reno-Benteen battlefield area. As the command retreated back from the Indian attack, they were supported by Lieutenant Edward Godfrey and his command. Historians believe this brave action saved the lives of Weir, Benteen, and their men. For 2 days, June 25th and June 26th, Major Reno, Captain Benteen, and their men fought furiously against the Indians. Finally, in the late afternoon of June 26, 1876, the Indians could see what moving in the direction of the Wolf Mountains, Jacob? Dust. Dust is correct. The Indians knew this was more soldiers coming, so they packed up and left the battlefield area in a giant celebration. This left Major Reno's decimated troops in possession of the hill for which they had battled for the last 36 hours. Reno's 2 battalions had suffered losses of how many killed, Voigt?
I couldn't tell you.
Mauricio? 47 killed, is that correct?
Yes.
Ben? And how many wounded, Christina? 52. Very good. That evening, the entire Indian village prepared for their move out of the valley to the southeast, leaving the morning of June 27th. Late in the morning of June 27th, the what command came upon the Reno-Benteen battlefield? Chance? The Terry Gibbon is what I would prefer. Terry, like this. Terry, because he's in control of the command. So Terry Gibbon.
I put Terry and Gibbon.
I would prefer that.
Okay.
Terry Gibbon command came upon the Reno-Benteen battlefield. On June 27th, General Alfred Terry sent Lieutenant Who and Crow's scouts in search of Custer and his command, Chloe. James Bradley. They came back from Custer Hill and told Terry they had found Custer dead and had counted the bodies of how many men, Susanna? 197. The lone survivor of the battle was Captain Whose horse Comanche? Isabel? Whose horse was Comanche? It was Keogh's, very good. The horse was badly wounded and later taken to the far west with the rest of the wounded from the Reno-Benteen battle. A party was then sent out again with Captain Benteen and Captain who? Thomas Weir. When the two reached the dead, Captain who was quoted saying, "Oh, how white they look."
I put weird.
That's correct. That's correct. Very good. On June 28th, the survivors began the painful task of burying Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer's command. The men were buried where they fell in shallow graves marked with what collected from the abandoned Indian village, Santos?
Crosses, banner, and teepee poles.
Marked with crosses. You could actually put marked with teepee poles. That'd be good enough. Marked with teepee poles collected from the abandoned village. At Custer Hill, a majority of the dead soldiers were what? Badly mutilated and scalped. Caleb?
Stripped.
Stripped.
Naked. As much as that may seem a little weird, it's a difference between being stripped and stripped naked. You know who else was stripped naked before he was executed? That's why we have this whole week coming up here. Who else was stripped naked when you're Jesus was, yeah. They don't show that, but the common practice for crucifixion in those days when they strung him up on the cross was to strip him naked. So that's, I don't know if that's where this comes from, but that's what happens. Okay. Wade.
Tom Custer.
Tom Custer, very good. Could only be identified by a tattoo on his arm, which was the American flag, the goddess of liberty, and his initials. Ben, who laid downhill from Tom and George Custer close to the body of so-and-so?
Boston Custer.
Close to the body of?
Oh, Audie Custer.
Audie Reed.
Audie.
Now, could you turn those around? Could you have those in opposite lines?
No.
You could, because they both obviously laid downhill from Tom and George Custer, right? They both laid down there. One's laying next to the other one. So you could put it either way. You could put Audie Reed laid downhill from Tom and George Custer close to the body of Boston Custer. You could have it the other way around. Yep.
Spell Audie.
A-U-T-I-E.
And then Reed is just R-E-D.
D. Audie's A-U-T-I-E. Okay, who was scalped twice? Hoyt?
The dude with the long facial hair.
Yeah, that won't do it, but give it a
Yeah.
shot. Lieutenant W.W. Cook. Okay, Lieutenant W.W. Cook was scalped twice, the second scalp being one of his long side whiskers. Who was not disfigured, but lay naked except for his socks with a Catholic medal around his neck, Mauricio? Keogh, very good. Since the Indians were very religious, it is suspected he was left alone because of the cross around his neck. George Armstrong Custer was stripped naked, but was neither scalped nor what, Christina?
Mutilated.
Mutilated, very good. Custer was shot twice, once through the left side of the chest and once what, Chance? In his left temple, yep. When approached by the rescue party, Custer looked as if he was asleep. Indian warriors had approached Custer to mutilate his body, but the Indian women pleaded with them to leave Custer's body alone. The warriors agreed and only cut off one of Custer's what, Chloe? Fingers. Indian women poked both of Custer's eardrums with what, Susanna?
I put sewing nails.
Sewing awls. How do you spell awls?
A-L-O-U-E-S.
How do you spell it?
I put A-U, I guess.
A-W-L-S. Sewing awls, yep.
When you were saying that he got shot and the temple gets put in the left,
I would put left temple.
wouldn't it go through? So,
Entrance wound. JFK. Okay. Cut off one only Custer's fingers. Indian women poked out both of Custer's eardrums with sewing awls. So we would better listen in the afterlife. Historians believe there are three possible reasons George Custer was not scalped or mutilated. Okay, the first one was what? Isabel?
Many Indians didn't recognize him.
And that won't work. The Indians didn't recognize him. Why didn't they recognize him?
Because of long hair.
He had cut his long hair before the campaign, and he was simply one of the lucky ones that did not get scalped or mutilated. Okay? So I'll read that to you again. Number one would be that the Indians didn't recognize who he was because he cut his long trademark hair just before the campaign. Thus, he was one of the lucky ones that just didn't get mutilated or scalped.
You didn't say all that stuff about the lucky ones?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you.
I can't suppose
This is
they
a-
recognize him because his hair was
Because
cut.
this is a review and I get it signed. See, when you get to go get your degree and when you get to get your degree and get to be a history teacher, you can have it written down any way you want.
Who didn't get what?
Okay, so here it is again. Here it is again. Why? And the first reason why he was not scalped, the Indians simply did not recognize him because he had cut his long trademark hair prior to the campaign, and he was simply one of the lucky ones that did not get scalped or mutilated. How about number 2, Morgan? Very good. They had respect for him because he was an officer in the military. Very good. That'll do good for that one. And number 3, I helped you a little bit with. Custer was a family member of the Sioux. It was rumored that Custer had a relationship with a Sioux woman prior to the campaign of 1876. The Sioux woman, who, Garrett? Mayotzi, you ought to know how to spell that. Had a baby in 1869 that had creamy skin and yellow streaks in its hair. The child's name was Yellowbird, who died at the age of 1. Because of this relationship in child, Custer was spared mutilization because he was considered family. Okay, Santos, the wounded men from Major Reno's campaign survived a painful how many mile journey by mule to the mouth of the Little Bighorn River where the far west had been docked? 15 miles. The wounded were taken aboard the Far West on June 30th, and the Far West steamed down the Bighorn to the Yellowstone River. On July 4th, the Far West began its 700-mile journey from the Yellowstone to Bismarck, North Dakota, and then to Fort Lincoln. Who received news at Fort Lincoln as she was sitting in her house quilting with several other women, Caleb? Libby Custer. She was then asked to go with the soldiers to inform the other women of their husband's death. She agreed and turned to who, stating, "We must pack now. We are not in the Army anymore." Wait.
Margaret Calhoun.
Margaret Calhoun, yeah.
How do you spell Libby?
L-I-B-B-I-E.
Okay,
How
because
about
they have a
Margaret?
Y in there.
Margaret, M-A-R-G-E-R, the same. That's my
G-E-R, or is it
J-A-R.
Where does he go?
Go
Margar.
back. Wherever they're
Sorry.
Word of this disastrous defeat of George Armstrong Custer and the mighty 7th Cavalry flashed over the nation. This was the 100th birthday for the United States of America, a time for celebration, not embarrassing news. The blank, Ben, played an important part in the Custer controversy in years to come.
I said media.
Media, that's the exact right answer.
Press. Media or press?
Press or media.
Okay.
Media.
Okay, in 1877, the remains of George Custer and many of the officers were re-entered in various locations back east. Number 1, George Armstrong Custer's remains were re-entered at where, Josh?
West Point.
West Point, New York, very good. Number 2, Hannah, Tom Custer was re-entered at Fort Leavenworth National Cemetery, very good. Number 3, G.W. Yates was exhumed and re-entered in Fort Leavenworth National Cemetery. Number 4, W.W. Cook was re-entered in Custer Battlefield National Cemetery, then exhumed and buried at Hamilton Cemetery in Hamilton, Ontario. Miles Keogh was exhumed and reburied at Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn, New York. Boston Custer and Audie Reed were exhumed in 1878 and buried where, Mauricio? Monroe, Michigan. Very good. In 1981, a granite memorial was erected by the War Department, and the remains of the 7th Cavalry were collected from their shallow graves and re-entered in a mass grave on top of Custer Hill. In 1890, Army personnel began the process of erecting what, Hoyt, at original gravesite stating various soldiers fell here. White memorial markers. That's what I want. White memorial markers.
Without like white marble mark.
You put that down, and it'll be great. You'll see how it works for you. White memorial. What's the difference between a marble marker and a memorial marker? Now, if you want to put white marble memorial markers, you can do that. What's the difference between a marble marker and a memorial marker?
There's not, marble's not just white.
Oh.
It's probably like the first one.
A memorial marker is to memorize someone for something they did. So if you don't put that, it doesn't make sense. But you can put white marble memorial marker if you want. Okay, just to try to work with you a little, Josh. Who just answered that last question? Okay, Jacob Schaefer. Who was discharged from the 7th Cavalry on August 7th, 1877 at the rank of sergeant, and re-enlisted in the U.S. Army and served as a captain in what, and died at the age of 73 on July 18th, 1926 in Marion, South Carolina, and was buried there? Daniel Kanipe, and what did he serve as a captain in?
World War
World War I. Very good.
So we put like,
I. No, it's wrong.
WW1.
oh damn man.
I put World War I just to be safe. So there's no sniveling.
And Kanipe is
The
K-N-I-P.
World War I era.
No, he served in World War I. Can-I-P. K-N-I-P.
K-A-N? IPE.
K-A-N-I-P, right on your ID sheet somewhere. Okay, all right, Christina, who was discharged on May 31st, 1879 with the rank of Trumpeter of Excellent Character? Giovanni Martini. He also re-enlisted, serving in the military till his retirement on January 7th, 1904. He died at the age of 73 on December 24th, 1922 in Brooklyn, New York, and was buried there. Chance, who was health impaired after the campaign of 1876. He was assigned to duty in the cavalry recruiting office in New York City and died suddenly at the age of 38 on December 9th, 1876 and was buried in New York. Thomas Weir, very good. Chloe, who stayed in the military until 1917 before retiring. He eventually died at the age of 81 on September 10th, 1927 in New Hampshire. Who? Winfield Edgerly, very good. Susanna, who was wounded in the buttock on June 25th, 1876? Charles Windall. And he was awarded the Medal of Honor on October 5th, 1882, and he later went on to become a what? Is he? For the Homestake Mining Company. Did you get on that? Did you get on those notes at all this weekend? God dang it! What if we'd had a test day? You'd have been in trouble. Well, he's on your ID sheet, kids. I'm not going to look those up for you. They're on your ID sheet. More, okay, go ahead. Shh, blacksmith. Okay, he became a blacksmith for the Homestake Mining Company, working for them almost 50 years. He attended which anniversary of the Battle of the Little Bighorn on June 26, 1926, Morgan? And the 60th in when? In 1936. Very good. He died at the age of 98 on March 11, 1950, and was buried in the Black Hills National Cemetery, becoming the oldest survivor of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Okay? Mauricio, who testified at the Reno Court of Inquiry in 1879 in Chicago, and he was appointed Major of the 9th Cavalry in 1881. Pantene. But he was suspended in 1884 for 1 year at half pay. Santos for what?
Drunken and disorderly conduct.
Very good. Drunken and disorderly conduct. He retired on disability on July 7th, 1888 and resided in Atlanta, Georgia. Oh, look at I put his name there. I'll have to cross that out. Holy moly.
I didn't even catch it.
He was promoted to Brigadier General on February 27th, 1890. He died at the age of 63 on June 22nd, 1898 in Atlanta of heart disease and was originally buried in Atlanta. He was re-entered in November of 1902. Where, Hannah? Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. Arlington?
Is it
You spell. Tell me how you think you spell it.
Arlington?
Perfect. Okay. All right. Next page. Marcus Reno was blamed for Custer's defeat. Reno was charged with blank, dereliction of duty, and disobeying orders. Garrett?
Cowardice?
Cowardice. Or you could put being a coward to make it easy. Being a coward. Wouldn't that be easier?
Yeah.
Because of these charges, Reno requested a court of inquiry in 1879 to try and clear his name. The hearings did clear him of all charges. Despite the findings, criticism continued and things became worse for Reno. Number 1, former friends avoided him. What was number 2, Chance?
His wife died.
His wife died. 3, his only son moved to a distant part of the country. What was 4, Chloe? He began to drink heavily and became very depressed. How about number 5, Wade? He was convicted of a flimsy morals charge and was dishonorably, very good, discharged from the army. And 6, Jacob, he developed what? And died a friendless, broken man. Cancer. Very good. It is a rough life, I'll tell you. Through efforts of descendants, interested individuals, and organizations, Major Marcus Reno was eventually cleared of all charges. In addition, an honorable discharge was issued to his family, because he was dead. Reno was then exhumed from his lowly Washington, D.C. grave and buried with full military honors. Where? Morgan? Custer Battlefield National Cemetery. Libby Custer outlived her husband by how many years, Josh?
57.
57, very good. Never remarrying. Following her husband's death, Libby learned that who had charged her husband responsible for the loss of his men's lives at the Little Bighorn, Hoyt?
Was it Grant?
President Grant. That put President Grant. Libby went to work entirely to defend her husband's reputation and transform him into a hero, dedicating her life to memorializing her husband. She verbally attacked Reno and Benteen for their cowardice and not providing support for her husband at Custer Hill. In 1885, she published a book entitled what, Ben?
Boots and saddles.
Boots and Saddles. Make sure you have just like that. Portraying her husband as an exemplary son, brother, husband, and commanding officer, Libby became very wealthy and worked very diligently with Congress to put together monuments at West Point and at the battlefield area in honor of her husband. On April 4th, 1933, at the age of what, Mauricio? 90? Oh, 93? Okay, 93, Elizabeth Bacon Custer died. After Congress passed laws stating women could be buried at West Point, Libby was buried next to her beloved general. Who died at the same age that we talked about here? Charles Wendell and Libby Custer. Both died at 93.
Bonus question.
Bonus question?
I thought it was 98.
90, how old?
No, Wendell was 98.
Yeah, it says he died in 98.
Perfect. All right.
Oh, then hold up.
Somebody's paying attention.
That dude was bad.
Well, another historic fact that happened concerning Mauricio Caballero.
Yeah. He died.
What happened to Mauricio?